Chapter 8. Here we go. One cool, rainy morning a few weeks later, Luke's family left in such a rush, they barely had time to say goodbye. Oh, that's the other thing, too. I feel like he's separating more and more. Like now, Dad doesn't really talk. Mom's at work now. He just gets a sandwich. Yeah. Right, so she's exhausted, right? They dashed out the door after breakfast. Matthew and Mark complaining about their packed lunches. Dad calling back, I'm going to that auction up at Chittlesville. Won't be home until supper. Mother hurried back and handed Luke a bag of cracklings and 3 pears and some biscuits from the night before. Anybody know what cracklings are? It's like pork rinds, right? Like, that's what they are. She muttered, so you won't get hungry, and gave him a quick kiss on the head. Then she was gone too. Luke peeked around the stairway door, surveying the chaos of dirty pans and crumb-covered plates left in the kitchen. He knew not to look out as far as the window, but he did anyway. His heart gave a strange jump when he saw the window was covered. Someone must have pulled the shade the night before to try to keep the kitchen warm, and then forgotten to raise it in the morning. Luke dared to lean out a little further. Yes, the shade was down, and the other window too. For the first time in almost 6 months, he could step out into the kitchen and not worry about being seen. This dude's like a prisoner, dude. 6 months in his room. And it's not like he's up there with games and stuff. He's up there with old dusty books and an old toy train. Right? A little bit. I know. He could run, skip, jump, dance, even on the vast linoleum without fear. He could clean up the kitchen and surprise Mother. He could do anything. He put his right foot out, tentatively, not quite daring to put his full weight on it. The floor squeaked. He froze. Nothing happened, but he retreated anyway. He went back up the stairs, crawled along the second-floor hallway to avoid the windows, and then climbed the stairs to the attic. He was so disgusted with himself, he could taste it. All right, hold up. I didn't realize that the attic wasn't the one floor up. I guess I didn't realize there was a second floor. It's like upstairs, right? Yeah, so you go upstairs and then upstairs again. So he's way far away. He's not just right above him. He's up the steps and then up the steps again. What?
Avery said something about Home Alone. In that room that Kevin had to go in.
Oh, true. That was the attic, right? Up top. Exactly. You're right. That's true. All right. I'm a coward. I'm a chicken. I deserve to be locked away in the attic forever. Ran through his head. No, he countered himself. I'm cautious. I'm making a plan. He climbed up onto the stool at the top of the trunk that served as his perch for watching out the back vents. The neighborhood behind his house was fully occupied now. He knew all the families had come up with names for most of them. The Big Car family had 4 expensive cars sitting in the driveway. The Gold family had all their hair the color of sunshine. The Bird Brain family had a set of row of 30 birdhouses along their backyard fence. Even though Luke could have told them it was pointless to do that until spring, the house he could see best, right behind the Garner's backyard, was occupied by the Sports family. 2 teenage boys lived there, and their deck overflowed with soccer balls, baseball bats, tennis rackets, basketballs, hockey sticks, and an apparatus for games Luke could only guess at. Today he wasn't interested in games. He was interested in seeing the families leave. He noticed before that all the houses were empty by 9 in the morning, with kids off to school and grown-ups off to work. 3 or 4 of the women didn't seem to have jobs, but they left too, returning late in the afternoon with shopping bags. Today he just had to make sure no one was staying home sick. The Gold family left first. 2 blonde heads in one car, 2 blonde heads in another. The Sports family was next. The boys carrying football pads and helmets, their mother teetering on high heels. Then there was the flurry of cars streaming from every driveway onto the still sparkling new streets. Luke counted each person, keeping track so carefully that he made scratches on the wall, and counted the scratches twice again at the end. Yes, 28 people gone. He was safe. Luke scrambled down from his chair, his head spinning with plans. First, he'd clean up the kitchen. Then he'd start some bread for supper. He'd never made bread before, but he'd watched Mother a million times. and then maybe he could pull the shades and the rest of the house and clean it thoroughly. He wouldn't vacuum, that'd be too loud, but he could dust and scrub and polish. Mother would be so pleased. You think she'd be happy or mad? Yeah, I agree. Yeah. Then in the afternoon, before Matthew and Mark or the kids in the neighborhood got back, he could put something on for supper. Maybe potato soup. Well, he could do this every day. He'd never considered housework or cooking particularly thrilling before. Matthew and Mark always scoffed that it's women's work. But it was better than nothing. And maybe, just maybe, if this worked, he could convince Dad to let him sneak out to the barn and help there too. Yeah, right. Right. Luke was so excited, he stepped into the kitchen without a second thought this time. Who cared if the floor creaked? No one was there to hear it. He gathered up dishes from the table and piled them into the sink, scrubbing everything with extraordinary zeal. He measured out flour and lard and milk and yeast and was putting it all in a bowl when it occurred to him it might be okay to turn on the radio, very softly. Nobody'd hear, and if they did, they'd just figure the family had forgotten to turn it off, just as they'd forgotten to raise the shades. The bread was in the oven, and Luke was picking up lint by hand from the living room rug when he heard tires on the gravel driveway. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Too early for a school bus or mother or dad. Luke sprinted for the stairs, hoping it would just go away. No luck. He heard the side door creaking open, and then Dad exclaiming, "What the?" He was back early. That shouldn't matter, but hiding on the staircase, Luke suddenly felt like the radio was as loud as an entire orchestra, like the smell of baking bread could fill 3 counties. "Luke!" Dad yelled. Luke heard his father's hand on the doorknob. He opened the door. "I was just trying to help," Luke blubbered. "I was safe. You left the shades down, so I thought it was okay. I made sure everyone was gone from the neighborhood and..." Dad glared. "You can't be sure," he snapped. "People like that, they get deliveries all the time. They get sick and come home from work. They have maids come during the day." Luke could have protested. No, the maids never come before the kids get home from school. But he didn't want to give himself away any more than he already had. "The shades were down," he said. "I didn't turn on a single light. Even if there were 1,000 people back there, no one would know I was here. Please, I've just got to do something. Look, I made bread and cleaned up and..." "What if a government inspector or someone stopped by here?" "I would have hidden, like always." Dad was shaking his head. "And leave them smelling bread baking in an empty house? You don't seem to understand," he said. "You can't take chances. You can't, because..." At that precise moment, the buzzer went off on the oven went off, sounding as loud as a siren. Dad gave Luke a dirty look and stalked over to the oven. He pulled out 2 bread pans and tossed them on the stove. He flipped off the radio. "I don't want you in the kitchen again," he said. "You stay hidden. That's an order." He went out the door, without looking back. Luke fled up the stairs. He wanted to stomp angrily, but he couldn't. No noise allowed. In his room, he hesitated, too upset to read, too restless to do anything else. He kept hearing, "You stay hidden. That's an order," echoing in his ears. But he'd been hidden. He'd been careful. To prove his point, to himself at least, he climbed back up on his perch by the back fence and looked out on the quiet neighborhood. All the driveways were empty. Nothing moved, not even the flag on a Gold family's flagpole or the spokes on the Bird Brains family's fake windmill. And then, out of the corner of his eye, Luke caught a glimpse of something behind one window of the Sports family's house. A face. A child's face. In a house where 2 boys already lived. Hey. Alright, chapter 9's only like 2 pages. Let's read chapter 9. I knew it. I was waiting. We said on the back there was someone coming, but alright, here it is. Luke was so surprised. He lost his balance and almost fell backwards off the trunk. By the time he recovered and righted himself, the face was gone. He had imagined it? Nah, was it just one of the Sports family's brothers home early from school? Kids got sick, like Dad said, or they decided to play hooky. Luke tried to remember every detail of the face he'd seen, or thought he'd seen. It had been younger than either of the Sports family's brother. softer, hadn't it? Maybe it was a thief or a maid come early. No, it's been a child. He didn't even let himself think what another child in that house would be. He stared for hours at the sports family's house, but no face reappeared. Nothing happened until 6, when the two sports family's boys drove up in their Jeep, unloaded their football gear, and carried it into the house. They didn't run out screaming about being robbed. And he'd seen no thief leave. He'd seen no maid leave. At 6:30, Luke reluctantly climbed down from his perch when he heard his mother's knock on the door. He sat down on his bed and muttered a distracted, "Come in." She rushed to hug him. "Luke, I'm sorry. I know you were just trying to help, and everything is amazingly clean. I'd love it if you could do this every day, but your father thinks, you can't." Luke was so busy thinking about the face in the window that at first he couldn't figure out what she was talking about. Oh, the bread, the house cleaning, the radio. "That's okay," Luke mumbled. But it wasn't, and it never would be. His anger came back. Why did his parents have to be so careful? Why didn't they just lock him in one of the trunks in the attic and be done with it? "Can't you talk to him?" Luke asked. "Can't you convince him?" Mother pushed Luke's hair back from his face. "I'll try," she said. "But he's just trying to protect you. We can't take any chances." Even if the face in the window of the sports family house was another third child, so what? Luke and the other kid could live right next to each other their whole lives and never meet. Luke might never see the other child again. And he'd certainly never see Luke. Luke lowered his head. "What am I supposed to do?" he asked. "There's nothing for me to do. Am I supposed to just sit in this room the rest of my life?" Mother was stroking his hair now. It made him feel itchy and irritable. "Oh, Lukey," she said, "you can do so much. Read and play and sleep whenever you want. Believe me, I'd like to live a day in your life right about now." "No, you wouldn't," Luke muttered. But he said it so softly, his mother sure couldn't hear it. He knew she wouldn't understand. If there was a third child in the sports family, would he understand? Did he feel the way Luke did?
I think it's a she. Well, it says he's met a shower child.
True.
Her name's Jen.
Is that what it said?